Welcome to Scoop and Scale, where we dish up the science and weigh the facts about mostly equine nutrition. I'm Jill Jackson, lifelong equestrian, podcast producer, and pony owner. I'm a dressage rider and at-home horse keeper, living the challenge of managing easy keepers on multiple acres of pasture.
And I'm equine nutrition consultant, Dr. Claire Tunis of Clarity Equine Nutrition. I develop diet plans for horses ranging from metabolic seniors to Olympic athletes. I also consult for equine nutrition companies. I'm a scientist, dressage rider, and pony club mom.
Claire and I have been horse friends for almost 20 years, and like all good horse friends, we're always talking horses. We talk about the challenges of managing our horses, our riding struggles, feeding horses, and what's going on in the wider equine community. This podcast is a place for us to have conversations mostly about equine nutrition. It's for anyone who wants to make better choices when it comes to feeding their horses.
And before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The information in this podcast is general and not meant to replace the individualized advice of your own qualified equine nutritionist or veterinarian. And while I have a PhD in nutrition, I'm not a veterinarian and can't give medical advice.
With that, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the following episode.
While hay harvesting season varies significantly by state, climate, and the type of hay being harvested, when the stars align, late May, early June are often the start of hay harvest season. Here at Scoop and Scale, Jill has become our resident hay farmer. I think she would agree that the last 4 years since moving to Iowa and buying a farm with hay pastures has been a learning curve. Thanks to her journey from horse owner and boarder in Arizona to property owner purchasing hay from local growers in Colorado, and now growing hay in Iowa, she has a new perspective on the realities of hay and what it takes to feed her horses. So today we thought we would discuss that journey and the lessons she's learned along the way, while also answering some hay-related listener questions. So let's start off by setting the scene so listeners have a clear vision of your journey on becoming a hay farmer. When I first met you, which is a long time ago now, you were keeping your horses in a typical boarding barn here in Arizona, where there were two types of hay being fed, that were available to you. And, you got to pick how much of each one you'd like them to feed, and then they fed it.
Yeah, that was it. And it was pretty similar when I kept my horse in Connecticut also.
So if we fast forward a few years, you ultimately found yourself relocated to Colorado, and you bought a 2.5 acre piece of property. It was in the high desert plains outside Colorado Springs, for those that might be familiar with Colorado. And, it was high plains type grassland. And I think the term grassland, having been there to visit you, is a very loosely used term, because to call it pasture would be a stretch.
Yes. I mean, calling it grass is a bit of a stretch. And the front range of Colorado is a really hard environment to grow any type of plants, really. There's water restrictions. It's dry, arid conditions, 7,000 feet. The weather's super volatile. And the soil's really dry and sandy. Like, those are all really contributing factors to growing grass, as you will.
I remember there's no organic matter in the ground. I just remember all your efforts to try and grow something. And really even just your gardening, I remember, was very much raised beds where you were putting just bags of, you weren't using any of the native soil. It was all bagged potting soil. So you weren't growing hay there, obviously, but you were doing all your own horse care. So you had to buy hay in. So were you just, I don't remember, were you going to the local feed store for a few bales at a time? Were you buying in bulk?
I was buying from the local feed store, and I would get 200 bales delivered, and that would take me through the winter. That was a year's worth of hay for a pony.
Right. Yeah, because you just had the one at that time. And that was Timothy, right?
Yes, it was Timothy.
Yeah. Colorado grows a lot of Timothy, if I'm correct.
Yes.
I know here in Arizona, the Timothy that people, it's very unusual to feed Timothy, but if anyone is feeding Timothy, it's coming in from Colorado. So how did you know what you were getting quality-wise? Was the hay grower testing it, or you just took your chances and kind of looked at it and ran with it?
So if anybody's seen Colorado Timothy, it's pretty amazing. And it's pretty normal in Colorado to buy certified weed-free hay, because if you want to go up into the mountains to go trail riding and camping, you have to have certified weed-free hay. And so that's what was available from the feed store that I was buying. And you can tell that it gets baled with a different colored twine. So,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
Hang on a minute. So you're saying because I've cut a lot of strings off of hay. My daughter used to feed for our local trainer. And so you do, I never really thought anything of it, but you get like bales with white twine and orange twine and blue twine.
Purple and yellow.
That in Colorado, what was it, yellow?
Purple and yellow twine.
Oh, is it like the mix, like two colors in one twine?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was a certified weed-free for you?
That's certified weed-free. So when I was getting a bale of hay, I didn't have to worry about weeds. I didn't have to pick through it. Obviously, mold, you never know until you open up a bale. But it always smelled good. It always looked good. So once I got the hay delivered, I then tested it myself.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and just to touch on the weed-free thing again, because I think for people that perhaps don't live in the Western states, it's really hard to get certified weed-free hay generally. Like when I was in Northern California, people would often resort to putting their horses on pellets.
Right.
If they were going to, because the action of making a hay pellet, the heat that's involved in that kills off any seed that might be weed seed, hay seed, any kind of seed of a non-native plant that might be in that hay, such that it's going to be inactive when the horse eats it. Because the problem is if the horse eats an active seed, whether that's the hay itself or the weed, it goes all the way through the digestive tract. It actually survives, and then it gets deposited in nature. And this comes with fertilizer, right? It's deposited in horse poop, and so then it's really likely to grow. And so the concern is that we're potentially introducing non-native plant species into our, national parks, BLM land, that kind of a thing. And so that's why there is a requirement for certified weed-free forage to be fed. I was not aware of there being such a thing available in bale form in Northern California. I'm sure there was. I just wasn't looking for it. But obviously in Colorado, you have so much open space and rangeland and stuff that it would make sense that that's available there. But I suspect knowing your story a little bit, I'm sure we're going to talk about weeds later. And I think it's just worth noting here, remember how this conversation about certified weed-free bales, because later on, it's a big deal. So did you know much about growing hay at that point when you're living in Colorado? Did you even give it much thought on how it was grown?
No, I didn't know anything about any of it. I just know that I fed my horse hay, right? That was about it.
And you just knew about hay quality, in the bale at the time you bought it, but prior to it getting to where you purchased it from, that was never part of your
no. And you process. And I we talk about hay quite a bit and hay quality and different types of hay, but as far as the actual growing process, no.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Okay, so let's fast forward again, and now you're being relocated to Iowa. Yes. And you decide to upscale and buy 40 acres, most of which is leased tillable land, and it's used for soy and corn. And you don't really have anything to do with it. You own it, but you don't do anything with that. Like a local farmer manages that and leases it and grows stuff on it.
Right.
But on the property, you do have two big pastures. And at the time when you purchased the ranch, there were quite a number of acres seeded for alfalfa hay, right?
So the pastures and the hay fields were all 100% alfalfa.
Oh, and that was about how many acres was that?
It's 8 acres total of hay.
Total. Yeah. But it wasn't all fenced. So some of that was fenced in pastures that could be grazed, and some of it was sort of open, unfenced pasture.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've got the thing we're always laughing about, because I still don't really waterway hay.
Yes. So then the waterway hay was mostly weeds. So the person that owned the property didn't manage it, and the farmer that leases the tillable land, they don't manage the waterway either. So at some point it had been planted with a waterway mix, which is normally like brome, orchard, rye. Sometimes there's fescue in it. It just depends what mix you get. Mine had a bunch of clover in it that had taken over. There was a lot of nightshade that was in it, which, as we all know, is not good. And just random weeds. Like, I definitely would walk through and wouldn't be like, this is a hay field. It definitely looked more like this is a weed field.
So I do think we need a timeout, because we have talked about your waterway hay in a previous episode, but we're going to have listeners who, if they're anything like me, are going to be sitting here listening thinking, what are they talking about? Waterway hay.
Okay.
Like, quick education in waterway hay.
So this is not ditch hay. This is not hay that's going along the roadside. So in the fields, to get the tractors in and out of the field, you will see, if you're driving along where there's corn and beans, you're going to see these grass sections that go between the fields. The waterway, so mine actually does have a waterway in it, because mine is angled down towards the center and I have drainage going through. And when it rains a lot, there is actually water running down it. So it does help with all the drainage to come down into this one area and then get moved off of the fields. But also when the tractors are moving through, they would be driving on that waterway.
So they're not driving on the tilled soil.
Correct.
To get from A to B, because you don't want to do that, because it compacts the soil and you push all the air out of the soil, and you need air in the soil because all the bacteria in the soil need air in the soil. And there's a whole nother, again,
it's a whole other farming thing we're not going to talk about.
Things you don't think about, right? Exactly. Right. So I remember us talking about the fact that if you bought this property, like at the time when you were thinking about buying it, that you wouldn't have to buy hay anymore, right? Because you had all this grass or alfalfa at the time. However, there was the issue that you didn't feed your horse alfalfa. The pony did not get alfalfa. Right. So it was great that you had those hay fields, but they weren't particularly useful to you.
Right. And we had moved in, we closed on the property at the end of April. So the alfalfa was already up, that we weren't going to do anything about it. So for that first year, I just baled it. I didn't bale it. I had somebody come in, they baled it, and they sold it off. And that was the end of it. So then I had the summer and the fall to decide what I was going to do, which was to spray all the alfalfa and to reseed the whole property. And apparently in this area, it was a sin, because every farmer I talked to, they were just like, you're going to do what? Like, that's such a nice stand of alfalfa. Like, why would you spray it? It's in such good shape. And I was like, my horse doesn't eat it. There's no point in me having this here.
Right. So out of curiosity, what did you do for hay that first winter? You obviously went and bought it from somewhere.
So I had brought a trailer load with me because I had my horse shipped. So I brought Timothy with me, and then I did buy local orchard hay. And so I started mixing, half and half of those together, so that for the next year, when the Timothy was gone, I was going to go right to
That's right. I forgot you filled your horse trailer full of hay. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So how did you decide what to seed it? And I think it's really worth noting, just going back to your comment about all the local farmers. I mean, you move in, you're not a farmer, you're in the heart of arable country in the US, and a fairly small town, right? Let's be honest. Everyone knows everyone. I can only imagine the conversations that were going on at the local bar.
Not only that everybody knows everybody knows this property specifically. We don't have to, people don't know us, but they know the property. So everywhere we went when we first moved in, they're like, oh yeah, I know that property. I'm like, I did work on it, or I did this. And I was just like, yeah. So yes, everybody knows. No secret. No secrets.
So you were the talk of the town with your annihilation of the alfalfa fields. I'm sure that was that a bit of an you probably didn't expect that, right? That was probably a bit of an introduction to the type of community you were now living in.
I just didn't know people were so passionate about alfalfa. Right. I mean, if you've ever dropped alfalfa seeds anywhere, it's just a weed. It just grows everywhere. Literally grows everywhere. So, anyway.
So what did you decide to seed it with then? What was that process? How did you? Because people ask me this, right? So people ask me, I'm going to buy, what should I do with this pasture? I wanted to grow hay. And I do not proclaim to be an expert. And because depending on where you are, right, your geographic region is going to be different. So much is different. So what did you do?
So I went to Google and did some searching, because one thing I do, if I don't know how to do something, I'll figure it out. So after watching some YouTube videos and doing some research, I found out about my local ag extension agent. So they're with the county. You can call them. It's a free service. She came out. We walked the hay fields. I talked to her about, what I needed for my horses. We looked at where the hay fields were in location. I have some timber on my property, the stuff that's in the waterway. I was using some pastures. We soil tested. Mm-hmm. And then once we figured out what the soil, need and what it would support, we then decided on a custom mix. I talked to you also because we needed to figure out which ones would be good for ponies.
Right. I was like, do not put rye in this pasture.
Right. So there's no rye in the pasture, and there's also no fescue. We decided that if I did sell the property, since I don't live in places very long, that there was no need in case somebody did have mares. We just bypassed the fescue altogether.
Right. And just for the listeners who are, the reason why I don't put rye in it is because rye is generally quite high in non-structural carbohydrate. It would be inappropriate to feed Jill's pony. The chances are, that one's going to run high in NSC, and then the fescue, unless you put in an endophyte-free type of fescue, there's the risk of endophytes, which, can cause issues for brood mares and young stock. So we just decided to leave fescue out of it. And yeah, we'll get into selling hay, but like that, again, just for me, it's easier not to have fescue. So, okay, so you mentioned you sprayed the alfalfa because you had to kill it off. So, but you didn't, I don't know if you do now, but certainly then you didn't own any spraying or seeding equipment. So how did you go about getting that done?
So I called the local co-op, which I didn't know what a local co-op was, but it's a thing.
And you found out you're actually part of it, right? I remember that conversation because you called them and you're like, oh, apparently I'm part of this thing.
Yeah, so I'm in the co-op, and I just called them. I said, I need to spray my alfalfa. I want to kill it. I need to I'm going to reseed. They also gave me the third degree about spraying the stand of alfalfa, and that, was I really sure that I wanted to do this? And they came and they sprayed it all. So that was all killed off, and then you just wait for it to die. Doesn't take very long.
Right.
Yep. And then as far as reseeding, I also didn't have any seeding equipment.
Right.
So, interesting thing, when you need to have equipment, you just go down to the local elevator. This is a thing.
Grain
I had
elevator.
to learn all about it. It's a grain elevator. And you just ask them, you tell them, like, I need to have seed planted. I need a farmer to come and drill seed the soil. And then you wait, and then, in a few days, either a farmer will show up at your property or he'll call you and he'll say, I can come and do this for you. I have a drill seeder. And
it's a bit of cash on the side type of deal.
Well, yeah. So that's what happens. So drill seeding, when you spray a field and you need to start a brand new hay field, a drill seeder, it goes along and it slices the ground and it precision drops the seeds in at a certain depth, and then it covers it back up. And that's how the drill seeding happens.
That's an expensive piece of equipment.
Yeah, it's not one that I'm going to buy. And that's why I had somebody. So broadcast seeding you don't want to do when you can do that if your field is already established. But when it's a brand new field, it's not recommended because the soil contact is reduced, the wind drift, it leaves the seeds vulnerable for the birds to eat it. So you just want to make sure, on that first time, that you're actually getting it drill seeded.
Broadcast seeding is what I do when I overseed my back lawn with rye in the fall.
Yes.
And then again in the spring with Bermuda. So anyone who overseeds their little handheld thing, and you put your seed in the little handheld thing, you turn the handle and it sprays seed everywhere, right? That's broadcast
Or the
seeding.
walk behind. You can get the walk behind pushing one that you
push
can also
ones.
do.
Or if you're really not that fancy at all, you just take a bag of hand seed, take your hand and just pick it out and throw it across that's a very sort of, biblical image, I think.
Right, it's just spreading it out
seeding. Back in the 1800s, it's sort of your Thomas Hardy, your Jane Elliott version of seeding a pasture. Just throw it by hand.
Right.
So yeah, so that's interesting. The different options, and it makes sense. So, so what time of year was it when you reseeded? Like, was that the fall?
So I reseeded. It was beginning, middle of September. So we had enough time to get everything sprayed and get, did our soil testing, did all that type of stuff, get the seed ordered. And then we did it in September.
So you just reseeded and then that was that. And then the next.
No.
Did it have time to come up that fall? Did it grow that fall?
Hold on. Let's go back a minute before, because let's talk about how smoothly it went to do this. So here's a fun thing. If anybody's ever looked at alfalfa seeds versus grass hay seeds.
Alfalfa seeds are fascinating.
Yeah, well, do you know what they look like?
I do. I actually thought they were like little burry on things in the hay. When I first moved to Arizona and we had a bunch of really late cut alfalfa in the barn that we were feeding, I was like, this is junk. Like, look at all these little like spiky things.
Yes.
And then I actually learned from you, those spiky things were actually alfalfa seeds. They're like little, I don't know, how do you explain them? They're like yo-yos. They look a little bit like sort of like little twisted, like, Jill, if you could see her face, she's like, it's nothing like a yo-yo.
Anyway, so alfalfa seeds have like more weight to them.
Yeah,
they're a bigger seed. And when you drill seed them, they just happily go through the drill seeder, no issue. Well,
they stay where they're put. Yeah.
The problem with, so I had a Timothy brome orchard mix made, my seed. Yeah. And these are very soft, very light, little tiny little seeds. And everybody here plants alfalfa. And you can adjust the drill seeder so that when it drops it, like you can put it so that it's for grass hay. Mm. But apparently that doesn't matter. The seeder just kept getting clogged up. They had to put some weird additive in with it to get them to move along. The farmer was very, very mad at me. It took way longer than what it should. He kept having to start and stop. There was places where there was like a whole bunch of seeds that fell at once, and then the seeds were going. Anyway, it was a nightmare. So that was not a very good experience for me at all.
Not a great way to make friends. They already think you're weird, and now you're really like, that's going to get back to everybody and their cousin.
Yeah, well, when I need to have it done again, that guy said he wasn't coming, so I had to find.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to find
back to the grain elevator. I need somebody else.
That is exactly what I did. I went back to the grain elevator for a new person, and that guy also got very mad at me. So anyway, I'll have to find number
Making
3.
friends here.
Yeah, but part of the thing that we were asking with listeners was, somebody had wanted to know about cost. So I'm just going to drop that in here because when I had the seed mix made, so it was 75-pound bags, and they were $285 a bag, and I needed 8 bags. So, that's our first cost, not paying the drill seeding guy.
Right, so that's over $2,000, and we haven't even...
First, we had to spray and kill off the alfalfa, and that was about $650 that I did to spray the property to kill it, and then do 285 times 8, whatever that number comes out to. I don't know.
2,280.
Okay, so right there alone to just kill and then replant, we are at almost 3,000.
What did you say your killing was?
650.
Killing, that sounds bad. So you're at 2,930. So that's our current running total. Okay, so that sounds like a run, and the stress of it all. So were you that was in the fall. Everything, if I remember correctly, it doesn't really grow much that fall. really it's the next spring. You really don't know if it's really worked until the next spring when it comes up.
You have no idea.
Right. So you're sitting with, crossing your fingers and toes that you spent all this money and you will actually have a hay field the next spring.
Yes.
And did you?
I did. Luckily I did. It came up and it looked good. And, I was out there very excited, checking it all the time, and it looked great.
So, okay. So now we're in that first spring and you are ready to make hay, right? It's grown and it's at a point where you want to make the hay, you want to cut it. You went to Iowa with a tractor.
In the grand scheme of tractors,
Iowa country, you did not go to Iowa with a tractor, but
I went with a oversized lawnmower that had a bucket on the front. Yeah.
It was a very cute tractor.
It was. I miss it. But yeah, it definitely was not a tractor.
Anyway, but that's what you had at this point. Yeah. But you didn't have any haying equipment.
No, we didn't have anything. So we had to buy.
So you're standing looking at this field and you're like, I need this cut. I'm guessing you went back to the grain elevator.
That is exactly. See, you're starting to understand. If you need anything, go to the grain elevator, somebody. So I went back to the grain elevator. I didn't have any equipment. I said, I need a farmer to cut and bale my hay. And not just bale my hay, but I needed somebody to do small squares, which I also found out was really hard to find because everybody just round bales here. So I got added to the list and a farmer showed up.
Okay, so that was in 2023?
That was in 2023, yes.
Okay, so since then, well, I think it's really important to, I remember that being very stressful because, yes, you went to the grain elevator and you got this guy to come.
Yeah.
But you didn't know when he was coming.
No.
And the past of the hayfield was ready to cut.
I had gone a few weeks ahead of time knowing the problem is that, I live in the land of very large acreages. I only have 40 acres. I only have 8 acres of hay that needs to be cut. Where am I on the list? Way down on the bottom. There's people here that are putting up thousands and thousands of bales of hay, right?
Right.
So at 8 acres, I'll get to you when I get to you.
Meanwhile, the grass is still growing.
The hay is growing.
And now it's going to seed.
Yes.
And now the weather window that you had for cutting it may have gone.
Right.
And if there is a limited window, you certainly are going to be at the bottom of the pile because any good weather is going to the bigger farmers first.
Right.
So I remember that being very stressful. And I seem to recall that very first harvest that you got, it wasn't great. It was too mature when you cut it, or more mature than you wanted it to be.
It was. And that winter I had a bunch of wasted hay because the horses would just pick through it. And it was, I don't want to say it wasn't edible. I guess if they were starving, they would have eaten it. But
and then was that the year you didn't have a lot of rain? You didn't get a great second cutting, right? I seem to remember you didn't get much the second. You hoped that you would get a good second cutting to make up for the lower quality in the first cutting, but you had some. I feel like there was some drought weather. You didn't get much growth, if I'm remembering.
We didn't get
correctly.
much growth. So, the second cutting's always tricky, right? Because things you don't think about if you're not growing hay. If there's no rain, it's the hottest part. I'm in Iowa. So, my growing season's fairly short. If you're growing alfalfa, you can get 4, sometimes 5 cuttings off of it. But with grass hay, it's growing so slow. And you have to cut beef. If you don't want foxtail in it, you got to cut before the foxtail comes up, which is the end of August. So I can't leave it and let it go. If I start getting rain, waiting for maturity, if I leave it, there's going to be foxtail.
Right.
So yes, that summer it was pretty dry. It was hot, and the second cutting was not great.
So at that point, your poor suffering husband, I think, had lived through one round of hay farmer Jill, and it was very stressful because you had to get people to come do the things, and you didn't know when they were coming, and then you didn't get the quality of hay that you wanted yet, even though it had been sitting right there. And so you decided to actually buy some used haymaking equipment. So then that way you could do it yourself and you wouldn't be waiting on contractors, right? And so you could then cut it hopefully at the right, all things being equal and the weather being great, you'd just be able to get in there and do it and get it done and not be waiting on somebody else. So what equipment did you need to buy? Because we've got this tiny tractor, which is a glorified lawnmower with a bucket on the front. I'm guessing that's not going to do the trick.
Right. So when I first moved here with the tiny tractor, I bought a bigger tractor. And
that's right. I remember that.
Then when we decided to buy hay equipment, that tractor was not actually big enough for the baler. Right. So we had to buy tractor number 3. So we bought a bigger tractor. We had to buy a hay tedder. So that is actually like after you cut the hay needs to be dried. It doesn't just lay there and dry because there's moisture on the ground and you have to be turning the hay. So the hay tedder does 2 things. It flips the hay over, and then it also, when it's time to rake it and put it into rows to bale it, it will make your rows for you.
So it's a thing people might have seen, like with spikes. It's got like these spiky things coming out the back of it.
Yeah, there's a few different types that you can get. Some of them have big spinning wheels on them that have spikes. Some of them have rows with spikes. But yeah, so that's going to go around and it's going to move all your hay and get it into rows.
Yeah.
We needed to buy a baler.
Yeah.
And then we needed hay wagons because once you bale it, it has to get moved. And you have
true.
You have to put it somewhere that, is easy to move because you can't just load the back of your truck. It's not big enough.
Right. And I think, before listeners kind of listen to this and go, oh my gosh, she went and bought all this equipment. I mean, it's expensive equipment. I mean, I think it's worth saying you didn't go and buy new. I mean, you sort of did this on a budget, and some of your equipment is decades old, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah, so the hay tedder is in 1970s something. It's an Alice Chalmers, actually, which the brand isn't even around anymore. So we found a guy that actually had 2 of them that were not in very good shape, and we bought them both. My husband is an engineer and likes to tinker with stuff, so we have one for parts, and then we have one that's actually working. We bought a John Deere baler to 1980 something, not new.
Right.
And the hay wagons were pretty much rotting in somebody's field, and we bought them and we ended up having to replace the boards on them. We replaced, I think, 1 or 2 of the tires on them. But yeah, we had to rebuild those also. They're really just the frames that we were using. Yeah, so definitely.
We've gone from being, what was my number, $2,930. We're now, we can add tens of thousands of dollars to that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean...
Okay. So we're seriously in the hole at this point. We're not saving any money making hay at this point.
No.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear. Because I think people think that if you just make your own hay, you're going to be saving money. I mean, even when you didn't have all this equipment, you were paying, even the year, that first season when you didn't have the equipment, I mean, you're paying the guy to come and, the contractor to come and put it up for you.
Yeah,
and you're paying extra hands. I mean, I my grandfather was a dairy farmer, and I remember as a child, we actually on the horse property where we kept horses, my mom and I, we did do a hay crop one year, and I have very fond memories of being very tiny, preschool age, on my granddad's farm during hay harvest. But I vividly remember, like, when it's hay, I mean, it's all in. Right, because you've got this weather window, you've got to get it done. It is all hands on deck. And I think harvest season is like that, regardless of what you're harvesting, wherever you are in the world. I mean, it is, you're working day and night to get it done. I mean, it just has to get done. And so, you're paying extra hands as well to throw it in the hay wagon and stack it in the hay barn. Right? It's a lot of manpower as well. You need more manpower than you and your husband.
Yeah.
Realistically.
We could probably do it ourselves. I would say the biggest problem for me is that I'm 5'2". When you stack hay, either on the wagon, So somebody has to ride on the back. One person's driving the tractor, one person's standing on the back. The baler's feeding sort of on a little conveyor to the wagon, and then somebody has to take the bale and stack it. Well, when you're 5'2" and the bales are 3 high, after that you're going over your head, right? Like,
yeah,
you have to be able to lift those bales, and when you're short, like, you just, So yes, we always have to hire. We usually get a high school kid. It's $20 an hour to pay them to come and get them to stack.
Yeah. So is it less stressful now you own your own equipment and you're not relying on anyone else?
No, it's not less stressful. It's I have control over when I can get out there and do it, but the stress of haying, there's nothing that is not stressful about it. I don't even I don't think there's anything else in the world that stresses me out as much as haying ever in my life.
And the weather is the big thing, right? I mean, it's just because the grass grows and does its thing. There's, and then it's a matter of, are you going to have the weather you need?
Right. So what happens is when the hay starts, when the hay gets to the height that I'm like, okay, we're getting close to cutting, I have 4 weather apps and we start watching them. Like Neil and I, we both will have them up every day, looking at the long range forecast, looking at our work schedules, seeing like how, where's this going to fall into the week? And are all the apps reading the same thing? Is this actually a real weather window that we're going to be able to do it? We start calling the other farmers. We have a friend down the road. Like, it's tricky because there's a lot of hay farmers here that are haying for cows and they don't care if they drop it and it gets rained on. Like, their concern's not the same. So you can't just follow everybody's lead on cutting.
It's really interesting you say that because my granddad grew a lot of hay. Right? His dairy cows it was pretty much one of the main crops he grew was hay for the dairy cows. And before I was born, my mom, has a story, remembers a time where he would look at, as a lot of the old sort of farming folk do, right? He'd look at, birds in the trees and like, where are they building their nests? And like, because nature knows things that we don't, kind of thing. And he was like, he would really read the environment. And then he got, Joe down the streets cut. And it's really tempting to, they started cutting, like, I need to start cutting too. But there's no, you don't know who's right and who's wrong. And sometimes you do figure it out. And so the one year she remembers him listening to like the national weather forecast and going off of like the national weather forecast recommendation for farmers. And he did it instead of using his own gut instinct and got it completely wrong and lost the entire harvest. And after that, he just always went with his gut feeling. But yeah, it's really stressful.
I mean, you go to bed you go to bed every night, like before I get in bed, it's like, let's look at the weather app, like what's happening. Every cloud that goes by, you're watching it. You're like, is this building? How hot's it going to be? Is it going to kick up a storm in the afternoon? Like, it's craziness.
Right. And then, if you're trying to cut low NSC hay, as you are for, have been for a pony, it's like, you actually want it to be kind of gray and you want to cut it in the morning and you want it to have been cloudy. And like, there's all these other things, it's like, how do you set yourself up to try and make sure that the NSC is as low as possible on the day that you cut it? It's a lot of moving pieces.
Well, and the other thing that people don't think about when they're buying hay, like we're doing this, we have full-time jobs. So if I want to cut first thing in the morning, it's during work hours.
Right.
A lot of people don't cut in the morning or they don't know or, they don't care, whatever the case is. But if you're getting off work at 5 o'clock and going out to cut, you're getting your highest sugar level right there. I mean, it's already against you when you cut. So, that's another stress is if the weather window falls during the week, then you have to adjust your work schedule.
Like right now.
Without
much water. Yeah.
This is it. I've got to cut and I've got to take the time off work and I've got to get out there and do it.
Yeah. So this year, when you already have your first cutting in.
Yes.
I think you did that Memorial Day weekend. It seemed to go pretty smoothly with regards to getting it cut. But last year, it was very wet.
Yeah. So that was actually 2 years ago.
Oh, was it? Okay.
And there was no window to cut the hay. Like, it just kept raining and raining and raining, and the hay got super mature I mean, it was so tall. So then when the window opened to cut it, we couldn't get it to dry. Like it was so thick and so coarse and so long that we were out there 3 times a day tedding, so flipping the hay over, kept turning it so the sun would get on it.
Right.
And the ground was so wet. So it was still, even though it was warming up, like it was still kicking off moisture with the dew and then with the heating of it, so as we were trying to get this to dry, I think it was on the ground for 4 days with us tedding 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Then the rain came back. So we knew at that point that we were going to have to bale in whatever condition it was in, because otherwise it was going to get rained on again and we would have just wasted the whole thing and had to figure out a way to get it off the field. So we put it up knowing that...
You can't just leave it on the field because you need the next cutting to come up through. Right. It would choke the next cutting.
If we didn't bale it, it still had to get off the field and it had to go somewhere. So, and it was a lot of hay because it had gotten so mature.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of hay. Anyway, so we had to bale knowing that we were going to end up with some moldy bales because it just wasn't dry enough.
Yeah, I remember you stacking them on their, sides so that they were like the stalks were vertical to help them drain, and you salted them, didn't you?
I salted them. I had industrial fans in there. I did everything that I could do to try to get them to dry to save some of it. But the moisture level was just too high.
Right. And it did ultimately mold, right? I mean, you sold a lot of it off to cattle.
Yeah. Luckily, I have a good cattle farmer that'll take most of it off my hands when it goes bad. And I mean, some of it was okay. Most of it was bad.
Right. And I should just say, I don't think we mentioned it already, but yes, this year went smoothly. But I remember you sent me a text. Was it last week? I'm totally lost track of time. Last week. Yeah, it was last week, last Monday. And you were like, you're not going to believe this. The baler broke. You're out there baling and the baler broke.
Yeah, we had 6 bales on the rack. 6. And this is the other thing. The equipment sits all winter, right? Like it sits, you only use it twice a year. So, you can do everything you can for maintenance. It's a 1980s piece of equipment. We try to grease it and stay on top of everything, but the U-joint broke. It's Memorial Day Monday. It's 7:00 at night. Like you're not getting a U-joint, right? Like that's just so. I have a guy here that I've paid. He showed up on his Memorial Day to help stack. It's just the way it goes. Like it's just one more stressor to add to it. That there's always the chance it's just gonna break.
Right. So we've kind of made it sound like the grass just grows and the work is after you cut it, but actually it's not quite that simple, right? Because you have to look after the soil because the soil feeds the grass. So what do you do for soil management? What's that piece of the equation look like?
So I fertilize every year. Mm-hmm. And because I started with a fresh field, if you will, because I sprayed it all and I planted it, the first few years I just called the co-op. I said I need to fertilize my hay fields. They came, they fertilized. There was nothing.
The first cutting, right? You take a cutting off and then they come and fertilize?
Take a cutting off. You go back to watching the weather. You want to get the fertilizer down prior to the next rain. So you don't want to do it right when it's cut because it'll burn it.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just watching the weather, giving the hay a little bit of time to grow. And then when it's going to rain, we try to get the fertilizer out there so that when it rains, it's going to go into the ground. Right. The fertilizer is a pellet or pellets. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't done anything special with that. But this year, one of my hay fields actually had some weeds in it. And so I called the co-op to come out and
No, not weeds.
Yes. So I had 2 types of weeds. I had sprayed the hay earlier this year for weeds. So these weeds were dying. But once you cut the hay and it's all laying there, you can really see what's going on. Because when the hay is tall, you don't really see the weeds, right? Because it just looks like you look across it and you don't see them. But there was quite a bit of shepherd's purse and what was the other one? Pennycress, I think.
Yeah.
So I called the co-op. The agent came out. We did some soil tests. and I'm waiting for the results on that. So once he gets me the results back, they will make a custom fertilizer mix to amend that soil. And it's only one hay field. The rest of them were all didn't have any weeds in them. They look great, so I don't have to worry about those. But this one definitely, there's something going on that we need to address. So that one might get a custom mix of fertilizer to try to.
Because certain weeds like certain things like soil is high in magnesium and stuff like that. So it's like the weeds are an indicator that either you've got like pockets of standing water, or something's not right in your soil, or something's not right in the ground.
Yep. So the agronomist, when he comes, like, we walk the field, we're going to look for all those patches where the weeds are, and like he's going to sample all those areas versus the areas that have good standing hay. So he can really get an idea of, what the difference is between the two areas.
Right.
And then we'll come up with something, and hopefully get it before it rains, get it down.
So how many man hours are you into that cutting that you just did on Memorial Day weekend? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so to cut it all, it took, so on Saturday, it was about 8 hours of cutting.
Okay.
Just to cut it. Then we tedded it twice a day. So we tedded it Sunday in the morning, Sunday in the afternoon. The tedding, it goes a little bit faster. So, you're looking at like maybe 4 hours of tedding in the morning and 4 hours, I guess, back to 8 hours again. And then Monday morning we tedded, and then Monday afternoon we raked it all. So we put it into the rows for the baler. So that would have been another 8 hours roughly.
Yeah.
And then we baled. So Monday night.
And then your baler broke.
And then the baler broke. So Tuesday night after work, we started baling at 5:30. We baled till 8:30-ish, 9, I don't know, somewhere around there. And then we did the same thing the next night.
Oh, wow.
So, it was that many hours.
Yeah. And like three of you pretty much out there, because you had the guy that came to help. So there's like
With
three of you for, I guess it's two, so like 8. Only one of you could be cutting and tedding at any given time. So that's like 16 hours. And then you've got, another 6 hours. But at that point, those 6 hours, you've got 3 people. So that's 6, 12, 18. So you
missed an 8 hours though.
Did I miss an 8 hours of tedding? Yeah. So you've got, it's a lot of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours for somebody that's not an actual hay farmer.
And you didn't even get the satisfaction of knowing how many bales you got this year, right? Because your bale counter broke too. Because I always think that's kind of like it's like, ooh, it's like a bit like guess the pennies in a jar, right? It's like how many, it's I remember that sort of the satisfaction as a kid, like looking at a field and going, it's this high, and it's about, we're going to get, 400 bales off this field or whatever, and then seeing how close you are. And you didn't even get to play that game because your counter broke.
Well, and also last year, since we had just got the baler, we didn't have it adjusted properly, like the tension. So we baled really loose bales. So we had a lot of bales. And this year we got the tension tuned in. And so I don't think I have as many bales, but they're heavier bales. So I don't know that we would have got.
You're going to be moaning about that this winter. Note to self.
I know. So I had a bunch of people, message and ask if they could buy some of my first cutting hay. And I just said, I can't. Like, I don't know how many I actually have. And the last thing I want to do is get to February and not have enough hay for myself. So I'm keeping the whole cutting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so we did get quite a few questions from listeners that were hay related questions.
Yeah. We did. Let's see. What did they... Okay, so this I thought was a good one. So somebody asked, how long do you have to wait after baling to test the hay? And then also, like, how soon after baling is it safe to feed the hay?
Oh, that's a really good one. So it's funny because growing up, there's this whole thing of like, the hay needs to cure in the barn and you don't feed it until like that fall. I went along with that for a long time, but the reality is when you actually look at it, if it's dry enough to bale, it's dry enough to feed. Like, you shouldn't be baling it at more than 15% moisture. Otherwise it molds, as you found out last year. And so if it's correctly cured and dried in the field before you bale it, there is no reason why you can't just feed it. And, then, and I do think that probably comes from people feeding new hay and the horse is getting loose manure and digestive upset. But that's probably less to do with the fact that it was straight off the field, or more to do with the fact that it was probably nutritionally just very different than whatever forage they had been feeding prior to starting that year's hay. So my sense is, knowing what I know now versus what I knew when I was like 15, is that the digestive upset that was caused by switching to the hay had nothing to do with how young the hay was, and a lot more to do with the fact that nutritionally, the hay that they were then feeding, the new hay, was just a very different nutrition profile than what they were feeding, and they just upset the horse's digestive tract.
Right.
And the same thing could have happened if they'd started it in the fall, kind of thing. So, and similarly with testing it, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to test it, right after. For most of the things that most of us peoples who are testing hay are going to be looking at, like, for example, especially the minerals, right? The minerals don't change over time. The NSC will stay pretty constant. Those kinds of things. What does change with testing are, for example, the vitamins, especially the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A and E. Kentucky Equine Research, actually, for anyone that's interesting, has did some research not that long ago looking at the difference in, I think it was vitamin E, between just when it was cut to tedded to baled to stored in the barn, and then I think 6 months later. So they could really see it. And there's a huge drop-off between when it's cut to when it's baled. Like, the biggest drop-off, it was actually in that first 72 hours. So those fat-soluble vitamins will go down, but that's going to happen that's just what happens, because they're just not, they're so sensitive. Those vitamins are so heat and light sensitive that's just going to happen. So there's really no reason to not test it fairly soon after it's,
I usually
made.
do mine the week after. I mean, I'm going to test mine. I'm going to get my samples this weekend, and I put it up last week. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I'm so sick of looking at hay when I finish that I usually wait a week before I go.
Yeah, you don't want to see it again. You need to recovery or downtime. So, I mean, I think the moisture thing's an interesting thing, though, because there's all sorts of gadgets, right, for testing the moisture of, plants and things that we're harvesting, whether that's corn or soy or hay as well, right? Or there are just some, a bit like my granddad looking at where the trees and birds are nesting in the trees kind of thing. There is some sort of, old standards that stand the test of time that people use to know how much moisture is in their hay. So how are you figuring out that your tedded hay is ready to bale?
So it's sort of silly. Once the hay is down, I'm walking out in the fields, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times a day, different fields, picking up the hay, smelling the hay, looking at the hay. I mean, you can tell by
you don't want to test it. You really are sick of it.
Yeah. Once you've looked at hay that's been cut for a while, you really can look at it and be like, it's not dry enough, because it does have a different color. But really a twist test. So you pick up a handful of hay and you twist it tight a few times. And if those strands start to break, right? Yeah. Then you know that it's dry. You're going to hear it. Yeah. And then if they don't break, then it's not dry enough. But definitely you can feel, I just want to say, you just know. But you do. You do.
It is that gut feeling thing. You just learn. You learn what it's supposed to be like. I mean, I will say, you don't want it too moist because of mold. You also don't want it too dry, because you get what's called leaf shatter. So when it gets baled, especially if you've got your baler set correctly and you're baling your bales on the tighter side, when you crush that hay in the bale, the leaves will fall off and you get what's called leaf shatter, and you can lose a lot of the nutrition's in the leaves, right? So if the leaves shatter and break and fall off, then you've lost a lot of nutrition. That's particularly an issue. We see that a lot in alfalfa.
I was going to say, that's definitely an alfalfa issue.
It is an alfalfa issue, but having it too dry, and you have enough humidity in your atmosphere, it's less of an issue than out here. where it's so dry. We have so little humidity that, things really do get super dry. Obviously, going back to the when would I feed that hay off the field, if there's any heat in it, right? If I open a bale that I've just baled a week ago and I'm going to feed it, if there's any heat in it, I'm not feeding it, right? It's damp, it's fermenting, like you don't want to feed that.
Right. And definitely for once I stack the hay, I mean, and there's a certain way that you should be stacking it. It should have air gaps in it, the spacing around the outside of it. Probably for the first week or so, multiple times a day, I'll walk out there and stick my hand in between the bales and give them a feel. I mean, I know, again, once you've done it for a while, you just sort of know if the bales are really dry or if you have any concern with any of them. And you can, it's pretty wild when you put your hand in there and you're like, oh, these are actually warm. Right?
Yeah, am I correct that like those bales you knew were too wet last year? You didn't put them in your barn, did you?
I didn't. I had them in there so they were out of the rain. I had them all turned on their sides on pallets with salt, with fans on them, trying to get them to dry out, but I never put them in the stack.
Yeah. So about every August, there is a report of a barn fire, a hay barn fire, or hopefully not an actual horse barn fire. But sometimes, you have those barns where the hay storage is above the horse stalls. And, if people put up hay that's too moist, it literally ferments and generates a huge amount of heat and it will self-combust. Mm-hmm. That is the biggest, one of the reasons why when I was a kid, we never bought hay off the field because there was that risk because you didn't really know, as a buyer, how dry it was. And our hay barn was in an old cow shed in a barn, and above it had been converted into an apartment for the property owner's daughter to live in.
Right.
And my mom was not willing to take the risk of putting hay off the field in that. And it was a very, very minimal ventilation. As I say, it was an old three-stall cow shed. So it had like a stall door type opening, and that was the only ventilation, and it was stone. The rest of it was like foot thick stone, hundreds of year old barn, and we'd never put hay off the field in there. She just felt like it was too much of a risk. So we didn't buy our hay until like October, September, October. So it had been in somebody else's barn for a couple of months before it came into ours. But I think it's really important that people understand that if you're stacking hay off the field, it needs to be properly, stored on pallets, not on concrete, but on pallets so that it doesn't sweat on the bottom. So there's air circulation, not to put it tight against the walls. So there's air circulating between the hay bales and the walls. And then there's a way, get someone to teach you how to stack hay properly, because there's a way to stack it that you can put air channels in between the bales. And then be extremely careful if you ever walk across the top of hay stacks. Make me quite nervous. I mean, it's like I've been in barns
for broken legs.
Well, yeah, because it's suddenly something will give way, or again, if things are actually burning inside, like smoldering inside, and have actually disintegrated, like the stack will collapse. And I know it sounds dramatic, and I'm being alarmist, but it happens. Like it's a real thing. Like it happens.
I have something to say about the pallets and the bottom bales.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of people, if you've never put up hay, you probably wouldn't think about this. But, sometimes you'll buy bales of hay and one bale will be moldy.
Yeah.
The bottom bales of hay, even if they're stacked on pallets, do get more moisture than other bales. And there is a possibility that you're going to buy bales and they're going to, you can smell them. Sometimes they'll have a bit of discoloration on them. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, I have heavy plastic poly down on my floor as a moisture barrier.
On concrete?
No, on
dirt.
I have dirt floor. So that's why I've got the vapor barrier that I put down. Then I have pallets. I have the leftover hay underneath that.
Yeah.
And the bales still get moisture on them. So just know that sometimes that's just the nature of the beast, that if you buy bales and one bale might be bad, it could have been the bottom. Could have been the bottom bale.
It's a really good point. And I've seen that in stacks here in Arizona, because we're generally so dry, stacks of hay will just get, we call them squeezes, right? So they get 64 bales of ish in a squeeze, and they'll get stacked out and left in the field or put in a dirt patch in the corner of the field. And, you know, they bring the entire squeeze to you and put it in your barn if you're buying it by the squeeze. And I've definitely got to the bottom of a squeeze of hay, and every single bale on the bottom is sketchy.
Yeah.
Like, actually, sometimes they've been bad enough that I wouldn't, you know, all those bales, like 8 bales, they've all gone off to the cow guy down the street because they're not edible for horses.
Yeah.
Or they've got gravel stuck in them because they sat in the sort of gravel lot in the corner of the field, and they all got stuck in the bottom bales because of anyway. So yeah, it is the nature of it. It is what it is. It's nobody's fault. It's just
happens
how it is.
Yeah.
So do we get any other questions?
Yes. Another listener wants to know about different cuttings regarding the sugar and the starch levels, and whether there's difference between like a first and a second cutting, and how does the cutting impact the sugar content in the hay?
This is a great question. It's one that I get a lot, and I'm going to say it doesn't. Because it's really not so much about the cutting, whether it's first, second, or maybe third cutting, as it is how mature was that grass when it got cut. Because the more mature the grass is, the longer it's been out there growing, as part of the conversation we've had already today, it's going to be stemmier, it's going to be taller. So as a proportion of the hay, the sugar and starch is much lower. So the more mature and stemmy that hay is, the lower in starch and sugar it typically is. And that is not a function of cutting. It's a function of how mature the plant was when you cut it. Now, having said that, if I had to say which cutting did I think was most likely to be the most mature, it's probably going to be the first cutting, because, you know, we don't have perfect springs, and maybe you had a very wet spring and you couldn't get in there to cut that, to your point, like your year where it got away from you and got super tall and super mature, like the non-structural carbohydrate content in that hay would have been very low. If you'd been able to get in there at the time you wanted to, it probably would have been higher, right? So oftentimes our first cutting is a little more impacted by the weather and when we can get in there to cut it. And obviously it's been growing for a lot longer. It's been growing since, in your case, whenever the snow melted and the ground heated up. And so it's got a longer length of growing on it than the second and third cuttings will have. But it really isn't I would hope that worry less about the cutting and more about the maturity of the hay when it's cut.
But also, since they're asking about the sugar, the time of the day that it gets cut.
Yeah, like as we said, for sure. Like what time of day was it cut?
Right. Was it cloudy? What was the temperatures? Like those are all really important factors if you're really concerned about starch and sugar. It's not just the cutting. Yeah. Okay. This is a good question. And as you know, I love hay testing. So do you have to test every cut? So let's say that the farmer gets 3 cuttings from his hay fields. And if you buy bales from cutting 1 in field A and test them, and then decide to buy bales from cutting 3 in field A, do you need to test those bales as well?
Yes. And I know it's going to disappoint a bunch of people, I'm sure. But yes, you do, for all the reasons we've spoken about, right? I would expect the mineral levels would probably be fairly similar because they're pretty much tied to the soil and the growing conditions. Actually, it would be really fascinating to test your first cutting. Now you're about to get your fields fertilized and maybe change some of what's in your fertilizer this year. It would be interesting to see the different, test the second cutting and see if there's a difference there. But I would expect the minerals to stay fairly similar. But to your point about time of day, weather conditions, like that's going to directly influence, how much starch and sugar is in that hay, how mature the grass is, when it got cut, that'll affect the protein content, the overall energy content. So it's going to be different. Cutting it, the first cutting and the third cutting, even off the same field, even in the same year, are going to be different. So if you're testing, and I think most people who test hay are testing because they're concerned about starch and sugar levels or the NSC content, absolutely, that can be widely different between the first and third cutting off the same field. So yes, you absolutely have to test.
This listener had a follow-up question. What happens if the test is out of range? What do you do?
I guess it depends on what it is that's out of range and the horse that you're feeding, right? So again, I'm assuming most people who are motivated to cut their hay to test their hay are doing so because they're feeding metabolic horses, right? So let's go with the non-structural carbohydrate content is out of range, meaning that it's higher in non-structural carbohydrate than you would like. Then you've got some questions to ask yourself, right? Like, how stable is your horse, right? What does your horse's blood work look like? How insulin dysregulated are they? Do they have a history of laminitis? Are they actively laminitic? They've never had laminitis, right? Are they in work? Are they not in work? What's their body condition like? Are they overweight? Are they underweight? Like, these are all decisions that are going to help you determine whether or not it's safe, in inverted commas, for you to feed a hay that's a little higher than,
But there's only two answers to this.
What's that?
You either sell the hay or you soak it.
No, there's not, because if you're assuming that you grew it, I'm talking about if you test hay, if we've got an owner, I'm assuming that this person is not growing their own hay, right? And they've come to you to buy hay and, so I'm answering it from that perspective. Like, if I came to Farmer Jill and I said, I want to buy your hay, and you say, here's the test.
No, we're saying the same thing. I bought that whole load of hay in Colorado that time, and I got it tested, and it was too high in sugar. I mean, he ate like 3 bales of it and turned into a balloon, and so I sold it all off again. Right? Like,
there is that.
It really comes back
that may
too
not
high.
be. But the decision. I'm talking about the decision of whether you need to sell it, or the decision of whether you need to soak it is going to depend on the horse that you're feeding.
Right.
So it's hard to, it's a tough decision. It's a tough decision. There's going to be times where you're like, if you have an actively laminitic horse, or have a horse that's had a pretty active laminitic history, and you're looking at a hay that's got a non-structural carbohydrate of, 15%, I'm not feeding that. I'm either going to sell that hay or soak it, but then I'm going to have to soak it and retest it to make sure. Soaking it will lower the sugar content, but it may not lower it enough to make it safe for that horse, right? And then ultimately, the only way to know if that soaked hay or any hay in general is working for that metabolic horse is to feed the hay and do blood work and see how the horse is responding to that hay, right? So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough shopping for hay when you really need a certain kind of hay.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious about the answer to this question. Are there differences between growing hay for species other than horses? Like, for example, between hay for dairy cows and horses?
Yeah. I mean, if you're growing hay for dairy cows, you want as many calories per pound as possible and really high protein, right? Because you're feeding lactating animals. And I think we talked about this in our episode about brood mares, right? Like, we talked about how lactation is so demanding. And those dairy cows are, it's all about how much milk they make and then the milk fat content of that milk. And so you've got to get them enough calories and enough protein to sustain that. So yeah, generally, for example, alfalfa that gets sold for horses is pretty low quality, right, compared to what the dairy farmers are wanting. So, we look at it and think, well, this is like rocket fuel, but like, not if you're a dairy cow farmer. We're getting the, stuff they don't want. So that's kind of interesting. It's also interesting to keep in mind that ruminant animals on a pound for pound basis will always extract more nutrition from that hay than a horse will. And the reason for that is that their site of microbial fermentation is in their rumen. It's the first compartment of their digestive tract. And then you have the rumen, where all the microbial fermentation is. And then there's this thing called the omasum, which is often called, it's actually referred to as the leaves of the Bible. But it's like interlocking fingers of like folds of tissue, and that the hay has to pass through, any of the feed has to pass through. And so it acts as a physical barrier. Like the hay has to be small enough to pass through that. Horses don't have a physical site of constriction that really reduces the passage of the particles, right? So this is one of the reasons why ruminants regurgitate their feed and chew it and chew their cud and they keep chewing it and swallowing it and chewing it and swallowing it until it's small enough to physically pass out of their rumen. But that means that hay stays in their rumen for a lot longer. And so it's in contact with those bacterial population for a lot longer. And so they get a lot more out of that pound of hay than the horse will, because in the horse, they can just keep on going. Like they chew it and it just moves through the digestive tract. The other benefit is it means it's fully fermented and broken down before it gets to the small intestine in the cow, which is further down the digestive tract. So all of the protein that gets released, and all the nutrients and things that get released during that microbial fermentation are then available to in the small intestine for absorption. And I kind of slipped up a bit there because I said all of the protein. All of the protein that was in the diet will not be available to the cow because a lot of that protein gets used by the microbes in the gut. But what cows have that horses don't have is cows have the ability to use bacterial protein. So those bacteria that are attached to the hay go down the digestive tract with the hay and they're going to get cannibalized as a source of protein. So we don't worry so much about the essential amino acids in the diet of a dairy cow as we do in a horse, because horses don't get to use microbial fermentation because microbes is a source of protein, because the microbes are after the site of protein absorption in the horse. So it is a totally different digestive tract, right? It's a totally different digestive process. And as a result, the hay is going to be different. But generally speaking, for dairy cows, you want super high quality hay. Beef cows, it doesn't matter quite so much.
So here's another listener question, and I'm going to just add to this because everybody wants to ask about teff hay, and I get phone calls and people asking me about teff hay. Are there different growing seasons for different varieties of hay? For example, alfalfa versus timothy versus bluegrass versus teff.
Yeah, across nearly all the types of hay grown in North America, they're typically, nearly all of them. Doesn't matter if it's brome or timothy or alfalfa or teff, they're all going to be harvested in July and August. That's a very, those months are peak hay harvest season, but then there are going to be some varieties that are harvested earlier or later in the year. For example, alfalfa is often being cut in May or even earlier here in Arizona, and we're still cutting alfalfa. I swear last year they were cutting alfalfa in November, right? So we might get 8 cuttings of alfalfa off of the field. Same in California when I lived there. It's a really long cutting season, right? So it may not be so much. The variety of hay that's dictating the season in which it's cut as it is where the variety is being grown. Like you said, you don't have the growing season we have here. And then sometimes it's dictated the other way. It's too hot for us to grow. We can't grow brome and timothy in Arizona, right? It's too hot. So we don't have a growing season period for that. But we can grow teff, we can grow Bermuda, the warm season grasses, and we can grow alfalfa. But obviously, we're irrigating to grow those. So there is some offset, but I think it's more where you are and a little bit less about, the type of hay you're growing, except with alfalfa, because like you said, it's pretty much, it's a weed. It grows anywhere. It grows here where there's no, it'll grow. We get alfalfa growing in patches in our barnyard where there's no water. The stuff it's crazy. So I do have a listener question for you. So there was lots of talk about how expensive hay is, but I think this question was, there's also, basically wanting to know about the expensive hay. So what is it that's contributing to the rising cost of hay? I think horse owners are every year, right? We all say, oh, hay is so much more expensive this year and what have you. But, why is some hay cheaper? Why is some hay cheaper than others? What is it that's making hay so expensive?
So I mean, the overall cost, like we talked about some of them, right? That I don't think people
Right.
think about, like the seed and fertilizing and soil testing,
Mm-hmm.
the equipment. Obviously, the tractor runs on diesel. We all know the price of fuel right now,
Right.
especially it's not so bad in Iowa, but I know like diesel out in California, it's almost $8 a gallon. Like that's a
Right.
huge expense. The fertilizer, you want me to talk about this in the war in Ukraine?
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, it was certainly several years ago, right? It was affected by the war that was going on in Ukraine and what have you. So, I mean, there are just global things that go on that we just don't think about. Something that's going on the other side of the world is impacting, farm production here in the US. But that's a reality. We're a global economy. That's a reality.
Right. And if you take the equipment out of it and we just look at, the regular cost just for me to do fertilizing and soil sampling, if I have to do any additional seeding and things like that, I'm still spending almost $2,000 a year for 8 acres of hay. And
Right.
where I live, so I'm baling somewhere between I think they're probably around 55 or 60 pound bales of hay. They're grass hay. It's a stretch to get somebody to pay $5. If I asked $6, I doubt I'd be able to sell it. Right? Like that's just, but there's so much.
Because here we're paying, $25 a bale.
Right. But your bales are how many pounds?
110.
Right. So you're getting a 110 pound bale.
For sure. Yeah.
Everybody there lives in a subdivision. I mean, I have a small farm at 40 acres, right? Like there's 800 acres across the street from me. So there's just like such an abundance of hay where I live and everybody's growing it. If you live somewhere that the hay has to be shipped in, again, cost of diesel, like that's a huge expense. So
seed is, I think the cost of seed, I just even noticed this year when I went to reseed my lawn.
Right. $285 a bale.
$65 on an 8-pound bag of Bermuda seed for my lawn. I swear that was $25 3 years ago.
And mine was $285 for a 75-pound bag, and that's like a custom mix. And, I don't know what alfalfa bags are or anything like that, but there's just a lot of expense that goes into it. I don't have to water, but obviously if we lived in a drier area, there would be water, the cost of land. We don't want to talk about that, And again, the cost of the equipment, like, yes, I had to buy the equipment, but just like the baler broke the other day, it was the U-joint. We had to go get a U-joint. Luckily, my husband can fix stuff. If you didn't, you'd have to have somebody come out and fix it or take it somewhere and fix it. Like there's just a lot of additional expense that it's not as easy as just going out and cutting the hay and then ta-da, it's in little squares.
So then I come to you and I buy a bale of hay from you and I find some weed in it and I'm pissed because I just bought this bale of hay from you and there's some weed in it and now I'm angry at you because I've got weedy hay. Right. Yeah. And
this is the number one reason that I don't want to sell hay to people because I don't want anybody to come back and be like, I found a weed. And I try to tell anybody that buys hay from me, like I'm doing the best that I can to produce hay that I don't want to be a hay farmer. It's not my full-time job. Like I want my horses to eat it. And so it's what I'm feeding them. If you find a weed in it and you come back and start screaming, like, give your hay farmer some grace. Like nobody's trying to bale bad hay.
Right. Right.
And the foxtail.
No, it's really important. I think that's a really important, thing. I mean, and I get it. As a horse owner, it's really disappointing when you go and buy a load of hay and it's not great.
Yeah, it's disappointing when I spend hours and hours out doing it and I open my own bale and it's not great, right? Like it really
fair point.
Right? Like it really, really sucks, and people being upset, like I'll see, somebody bought 20 bales of hay and there's 2 foxtails in it. I have to be out and cutting before the foxtail comes up. Like if I don't cut in August, my grass isn't tall enough. It's not, it's not going to give me a very good cutting, but like every hay farmer's out there trying to do their best to avoid getting the weeds, to not have moldy hay, to not have, any issues with the hay. And so, when somebody's buying 2 bales or 3 bales and they're so upset and going on Facebook and,
God,
screaming about the place and screaming about the guy, and he won't take the bale back, and all this stuff. It's like, just give him some grace.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing if you buy a load, if you're getting a semi and the whole thing's moldy, fine. You buy 10 bales and there's one weed in one bale, or, it smells a little musty on one bale. Like, sorry, I tried my best.
Right.
So
on that note, as our resident hay farmer, is there anything you think we've forgotten to talk about that you're dying to share with listeners, or just...
No, I just think that if anybody has the opportunity to... If you have a local hay farmer and you can participate, I mean, yeah, it's a joke that it's always 90 degrees when you have to bale hay. It's, it's sort of true. But I think you don't have to be out there stacking hay and doing all that. But I think that getting to know your hay farmer, I think going out and watching the process, seeing what it's about, you're looking at 4 or 5 days out of your week that you can go and be a part of it. I think it's really eye-opening. I think you'll learn a lot about, what your horse is eating, what goes into it. You'll have a better appreciation and understanding of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's all I have.
Well, it's certainly been a journey. It's been an interesting journey, and you know a lot about growing hay now that you didn't know 4 years ago. Is it worth it?
No, it's not worth it at all. Should it be?
The things we do for our horses, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I love going out and opening the hay barn and being like, look at the hay, right? And appreciate it. But at the same time, when I'm in it, no, it's not worth it at all. I would much rather go back to Colorado and call the hay barn and just have them deliver me a load of Timothy.
Maybe one day again you'll be back there, but you'll be back there with a different perspective and greater appreciation. So, and
I'm going to open it up too. If anybody wants to come help hay, we'll be cutting again in August. I can get you some dates. You're more than welcome to come and hay with me, and I'll take you through the process.
Careful what you wish for.
I might get some free help. Who knows? For our listeners, if you'd like to be a part of our conversation, please send your suggestions for future topics and equine nutrition questions to info@scoopandscale.com and is spelled out. You can also find Claire at clarityequine.com.
We know that if you're like us, you're probably listening to this while driving or doing barn chores. But when your hands are free, if you'd share it with your friends on social media and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, it helps other horse lovers like you to find us.
For the Scoop and Scale podcast, I'm Jill Jackson.
And I'm Dr. Claire Tunis.
Thanks for riding along with us.